very, very well prepared and prepared himself for this moment, which was always going to come. He has made, in my view, a great success of a job.
Among King Charles's most reliable supporters for a long time was Nicholas Soames. In 1981, at the royal wedding to Princess Diana, Soames stood solidly by the future king, shielding him from criticism, supporting his decisions, and being a lifetime champion of the monarchy. He is the grandson of Winston Churchill. However, allegiance appears to have dissolved at this point. No one expected Soames to eventually speak out against King Charles, but he has. He lacks the diplomatic courtesy and well-reasoned remarks befitting a royal insider in his speech. At the moment, Soames is furious. His most devastating charge so far: he killed her. Although he may not have meant it literally, those 3 words spoken in frustration carry the weight of decades of secrets, betrayals, and sorrow. What made Soames finally snap? And what does it tell us about Charles's genuine connection with Diana and his closest friends and family? Come with me as I take you back to the beginning. The 65-year relationship between Soames and Charles had created a fraternity via tradition. Nicholas Soames's fury may be comprehended by considering the intimate relationship that existed between him and King Charles in the past. Over the course of 65 years, they had developed a strong link characterized by friendship, trust, and an unfaltering feeling of responsibility to the monarchy. This was no ordinary political alliance or transitory partnership. One of Charles's closest confidants and an untaintedly devoted guy, Nicholas Soames wasn't your average nobleman hanging around the royal inner circle. Coming from aristocratic backgrounds and both brought up to know the weight of responsibility, their relationship was deeply rooted in tradition. Winston Churchill is a name that conjures images of resiliency and leadership in Britain. Soames was born in 1948, the grandson of the legendary statesman. He grew up in the lap of luxury and knew early on that with great power came great responsibility. Because of his family's extensive political and military connections, he became entangled in circles that centered on the royal family. His trajectory eventually intersected with that of the youthful Prince Charles. In the early 1960s, when Charles was a little child and Soames was a little older than him, they initially crossed paths. At the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, where they were both educated in leadership, discipline, and devotion to the monarch, their bond deepened. As they both dealt with the expectations of their families and the institution they were meant to work for, this common experience strengthened their relationship. In contrast to Charles's introverted and sensitive personality, Soames was an extroverted natural with a powerful voice and a reputation for being honest to the bone. Unlike Charles, who was known to be serious and overwhelmed by the expectations placed on him for his future job, Soames could crack a laugh when necessary and provide solid advice when necessary. Their connection blossomed throughout the years, going beyond just getting together socially. Charles had complete faith in Soames, who was a trusted advisor to the prince. He was there for Charles through thick and thin, providing advice, encouragement, and, most importantly, discretion. By being selected as Charles's best man, an important honor that represented the confidence between the two men, Soames played a pivotal part in Charles's 1981 marriage to Diana. More than a mere ceremonial function, it represented unwavering devotion. It is probable that Soames thought he was forming a solid royal alliance with his buddy Charles, one that would strengthen the monarchy and ensure Charles's future. However, everyone is aware that the plans did not materialize. The split. Soames found herself in the center. Soames was put in a difficult situation when Charles and Diana's marriage started to fall apart. On the one hand, he was very faithful to Charles, the man he had known for many years and who he had promised to back as king. Conversely, there was Diana, a youthful and vivacious lady who had won over the British people from the very beginning. Soames looked down on Diana because, in his opinion, she was too passionate, too impulsive, and too anxious to break away from the strict conventions of royal life to be a stabilizing influence for the monarchy. Soames was a vociferous opponent of Diana's when she started talking publicly about the problems in her marriage, suggesting that she felt alone inside the royal family. When Diana voiced her fears that royal insiders were monitoring and undermining her, Soames openly denied her accusations, calling them utter nonsense. He did not see Diana as the helpless victim she claimed to be. Rather, he saw a lady who had been blind to the gravity of her royal responsibilities and who had let her feelings, rather than following procedure, determine her behavior. As evidence of the prince's romance with Camilla Parker B.S. up, his steadfast backing of Charles became further clearer. Soames was there for Charles the whole time, even when everyone else cast harsh judgment on him for his adultery. In his view, Charles's marriage to Diana was bound to fail from the beginning, and Camilla was his one real love. Even after Diana's divorce from Charles was completed, Soames continued to take a hard line against her because of his devotion to Charles. He further isolated himself from public opinion by denying that her broken marriage had a profound emotional impact on her. An extraordinary global outpouring of grief after Diana's untimely death in a car collision in 1997, and the royal family was under to public criticism for the first time for its icy, elderly, and tardy reaction. Although the nation's grief was acknowledged by Queen Elizabeth and Charles in due course, Soames maintained his unwavering stance. Instead of publicly expressing compassion for Diana like others did, he kept defending Charles against the growing claims that his actions, his icy demeanor, his affair, and his supposed lack of concern for Diana's welfare had played a role in the circumstances surrounding her death. But when no one was looking, Soames's anger was at an all-time high. The plot thickens. Nicholas Soames has never been shy in expressing his disgust for Princess Diana. He was faithful to Charles without fail, yet he was distant, uncaring, and even harsh to Diana. In his view, she was more of a threat to the monarchy's stability than a helpless spouse in an unhappy marriage. She was a foreigner who, despite her upbringing, had failed to grasp her duty and was thus unprepared. While married to Charles, Diana told trusted friends that she felt ensnared, monitored, and even targeted by some factions within the royal family. Isolation set in as a result of the stresses of royal life and her increasing knowledge of Charles's affair with Camilla Parker B.S. Instead of showing compassion, Soames was quick to mock these worries when they made headlines. In 1995, during Diana's now infamous Panorama interview with journalist Martin Basher, his contempt finally broke out. Diana spilled the beans in this shocking interview about her marriage, her problems, and the attempts to discredit her. One of her most famous comments was, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded," which strongly hinted to Charles's long-term romance with Camilla. Another comment by Diana that infuriated Soames was her assertion that palace officials had been spying on her. The speaker made it seem as though she had enemies inside the royal family who were trying to stifle her voice or exert control over her. Soames did not hold back in his condemnation of her. In an incredibly rude and condescending remark, he publicly branded her accusations as complete hogwash and even went so far as to imply that she was experiencing psychosis at the time. Many took his remarks as an impassioned defense of the monarchy, and Charles as a means to quell rumors and shield the future king from potential embarrassment. However, Soames's response went beyond damage control. His resentment of Diana had a profoundly personal origin, as his close associates would subsequently disclose. His anger stemmed from the fact that her marriage to Charles had bitterly broken down, and he was outraged that the match he had supported had become the monarchy's gravest crisis. Because he was so enraged, he attacked Diana in the most public manner imaginable, oblivious to her pain. "It is important to stay out of these kinds of things, but I was absolutely fuming," Soames confessed afterwards. The interview that Diana gave was seen by him as a treachery, a step that put the monarchy in danger and embarrassed Charles. Not only did he strongly disapprove of her speaking up, but he went to extreme lengths to undermine her. Soames harshly implied that Diana's psychosis and mental illness, rather than any reality, were the basis for her charges against Charles, especially her assertion that he had been adulterous. It was a crushing claim that tried to discredit Diana by casting her worries in the light of a mentally ill woman's illusions. Soames lent credence to the palace's claims that Diana was a troublemaker and unsuited to the role of queen. He pretended to be the voice of reason and cast her aside as a disturbed lady who had made up stories to depose Charles. Later on, though, the world would find out that Diana was right to be worried. Her phone calls were tapped and her every move was watched, according to documents and testimony from former palace employees. She wasn't exaggerating. The strain she described was genuine. On the other hand, Soames refuted his claims in no uncertain terms. His conviction that Diana had ruined Charles and the monarchy persisted all the way to the end. He persisted in defending the man he had vowed allegiance to. Even when the truth of her treatment became apparent, he stubbornly refused to admit that she had been correct. Even in death, Soames was determined to portray Diana as the story's antagonist because he was one of her most vehement critics, and because he was determined to defend Charles. No matter the cost to Diana, he was never merely an enemy. While many of Charles's other associates openly mourned Diana's death in 1997, Soames chose not to do so. He chose to stay loyal to Charles, protecting the prince from criticism while keeping quiet about his former best friend's wife. However, his wrath was intensifying behind closed doors. The fact that Soames had served as Charles's best man is the indisputable fact that fuels his animosity. Everything came crashing down after he had vouched for the marriage and seen Charles and Diana's vows. Rumor has it that Soames harbored deep-seated animosity toward Charles over his handling of the marriage. After Charles's icy demeanor and subsequent romance with Camilla Parker B.S. ended the relationship, he blamed Charles for Diana's untimely death in a 1997 automobile collision, which caused widespread grief and blame to be sent in many directions. Despite publicly defending Charles, Soames apparently allowed his real sentiments to show in private. With the words, "It's bad," he finally spoke out on King Charles. It wasn't murder that was being accused, but rather the annihilation of a soul. According to Soames, Charles had doomed Diana to a life of misery, shame, and catastrophe. It was difficult for the guy who had believed in the marriage and stood at the altar with Charles to accept. The monarchy is currently under heavy examination, and Soames's comments against Charles and Diana have resurfaced, causing an explosive remark, a legacy re-examined. After centuries of veil and secrecy, the British royal family is now under unrelenting scrutiny. Not only are historians re-evaluating Charles's past now that he is king, but so is a new generation that did not see the drama of his marriage to Diana, but has inherited its effects. The public's perception of Charles is still heavily influenced by the controversy over his treatment of Diana, which has persisted for many years. Even those who supported him, fought for him, and even assaulted his adversaries on his behalf, like Nicholas Soames, are now under investigation as he takes the throne. Soames, who was formerly powerful and influential, is now the target of criticism. What was formerly considered a sign of aristocratic honor, his unfaltering devotion to Charles, is now considered an antiquated practice. His most notorious comment, made in a fit of rage, has stuck with him ever since. He killed her. This comment has historians and royal watchers wondering if Charles is admitting guilt or if he is just bitterly regretting seeing a marriage he once believed in collapse into public shame. At the moment, Soames was enraged that Diana had spoken out, that the media had taken her side, and that everything he had labored to defend was coming undone. He had been so devoted to Charles that he failed to notice the pain of Diana, the monarchy's former beloved, and in his wrath he had spoken words that decades later are being dissected by a society that has changed its view of Diana's awful end. In the eyes of people who had long suspected the royal family of being untrustworthy, Soames's comment confirmed their worst suspicions, that Diana had been abandoned, abused, and perhaps even forced to her death by the same establishment she had wed into. Others took it as a passionate tirade from a man whose faith in the royal system had eroded as he watched it fall apart. Finally, after years of remaining silent, Soames has chosen to publicly apologize. "I feel bad about it," confesses the grandson of Sir Winston Churchill. "I shouldn't have said it because I'm not a doctor, and I have no idea what that is." This is an unusual display of remorse from a guy who has, for the most part, refused to apologize for his statements. However, he still shows signs of hesitance and reluctance to accept full responsibility for the harm his remarks caused, even as he expresses sorrow. Not only does he realize he was wrong, but he is also mirroring the changing public view of Diana, who was once derided for being a difficult and unstable woman, but who was severely abused by her husband and the institution he represented. Soames may try to clear his name by claiming that his relationship with Charles proves his remarks were never meant to be interpreted as an accusation of the future king. He may also claim that, even in his anger, he never intended to imply that Charles was responsible for Diana's untimely demise. However, the issue that lingers for those who recall his remarks and have followed the decades-long dispute surrounding Diana's treatment is, what does this imply for King Charles? What Soames said has really reopened a wound that will never completely heal. Despite Charles's best efforts over the years to portray himself as a kind and progressive monarch, the shadow of his past looms large. No one has forgotten his marriage to Diana, her romance with Camilla, or the manner in which the establishment banded together to condemn Diana. And it's possible that Soames made matters worse by trying to retract his statements, because apologizing doesn't make his comments go away. On the contrary, it brings up additional concerns regarding the protective environment that formerly encircled Charles. Does this indicate that Soames also feels remorse for his deeds, given that he now regrets what he said? Are his feelings of shame stemming from his efforts to undermine Diana and ignore her worries? Or is he just trying to put the past in the past? The throne is precariously balanced. Now that he is king, Charles must not let his past define his rule. However, the story is further solidified with each unearthed interview, old comment, and instance of contempt directed against Diana. Not only did her spouse let her down, but so did the individuals he chose to associate with. Though uttered in rage, Soames's comments have taken on a symbolic meaning, a representation of the profound schisms that existed within the royal family during that period, a representation of the way in which Diana's anguish was disregarded, her hardships disregarded, and the way in which devotees of the crown viewed her as a problem to be contained, rather than a woman in need of compassion and understanding. He may be sincere in his efforts to make apologies, or he may be making a last-ditch effort to change his legacy. The harm has been done, though. The world will judge Soames and the man he fought so hard to protect, King Charles, when it reevaluates Diana and her legacy. Despite the upheaval of their history, Soames and Charles have maintained a lasting friendship in the present day. The unwavering devotion of Nicholas Soames to King Charles is an undeniable fact. Although their friendship was tarnished by the fissures that appeared after the breakup of Charles and Diana's marriage, the weight of time, grief, and common ground has helped to bind those wounds. Over the past few years, their connection has grown stronger, especially during Charles's worst hours. After Queen Elizabeth II's death in September 2022, Charles was ultimately crowned king. His mother's death was a devastating blow to his psyche and the monarchy as a whole. No one could have understood the new king's fragility more than Nicholas Soames. As Charles assumed the position for which he had trained his whole life, Soames was at his side, providing silent encouragement. The world witnessed a man enduring the weight of a nation's expectations as he mourned the death of his mother. In the background, though, Soames continued to serve as he always had, a reliable confidant, counselor, and protector. Soames remained steadfastly on Charles's side, even though the monarchy was under increased scrutiny. Princess Anne spared no punches when Prince Harry published his contentious memoir, Spare, and gave interviews openly attacking the royal family. In a scathing scolding, he accused Harry of making nasty and insulting remarks against the king. In spite of his personal remorse, he would never abide assaults on his longest friend, and his harsh and blunt remarks demonstrated this. For Soames, it's the most grotesque, hurtful, and terrible betrayal of his family, was the rare public comment he made. Nicholas Soames, the unwavering ally who had stood with Charles through thick and thin, revealed himself to the world at that moment. He was willing to protect Charles at any cost, unconcerned with public opinion or the passage of time. Even when his personal legacy gets more convoluted, Soames is defined by his unfaltering commitment. His unwavering commitment to Charles is unaffected by the taint that his connection with Diana may leave on his reputation. Even when faced with remorse, Soames has never abandoned his relationship since it is an honorable commitment. However, it is still unclear. What exactly does this devotion stand for? Is it an indication that their relationship is so strong that it can endure any kind of betrayal? On the other hand, might it be a reflection of the inflexible, antiquated system that Diana battled so valiantly to overthrow? A system in which the Queen's allegiance takes precedence above any compassion for its opponents? The voices of his loyal subjects, like Soames, will be vital in shaping King Charles's legacy as he moves forward. Is it ever honorable to support a friend no matter the cost? Or is it complicity? The public is forced to ask if devotion can ever justify violence. Have you any opinions? Is Nicholas Soames a representation of unwavering friendship, or an artifact from a system that valued secrecy and security more than honesty and compassion? Has he betrayed his old relationship with King Charles by speaking out about how the failed marriage affected Diana? Feel free to voice your thoughts in the space provided. Our message has been conveyed. For your viewing pleasure, I will see you in the subsequent episode.